for this very special event on AI. Camera is running probably now, yes, okay. And the microphone is working, so that's really nice. My name is Immeasurably. I'm a coordinator of Architectuurcentrum Eindhoven, and together with the University of Technology, CASA Vertigo, Tangram Architects, and a lot of people we have invited, we organize this event because we think making exhibitions is not only about presenting nice images, it's also to provoke debate, and especially this special topic, artificial intelligence, is an interesting, promising technology maybe, but also raises a lot of questions and concerns. So we hope to bridge actually generations, and that's one of the reasons we like to participate in this event, because we hope to bridge the younger generation and the older generation in this debate. And that's the reason why we are at the University of Technology, of course. It's, like I said, it's a very promising technology, and it raises also some concerns, and I hope that we also make them more or less, we will debate about them and talk afterwards. And I'm not going to moderate that talk. We have a very good moderator invited, and that's Anna van Hoorn, and she will introduce also our guests, and will host a debate. So I would like you to join the discussion afterwards and enjoy this afternoon. Anna, yes.
Does everybody understand me? Am I well? Yes? Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Renee. I don't know about you, but AI scares the hell out of me, and it intrigues me at the same time. And that's why I was really very, very pleased to be able to be the moderator of this afternoon. So I hope you have, you feel free enough to do your part in the discussion as well. So if you have doubts, fears and questions, I hope that you will use this opportunity and the speakers there to actually do something with those questions. What we actually are going to talk about is artificial intelligence, and we're going to be calling it AI to make it a lot easier, just a tool to generate spectacular architectural presentations? Or is it really going to change the way that we develop and design buildings and cities? That is actually the main issue. And the exhibition is called Immeasurably Important. It's about AI and also the soft values that we can use in design and in architecture. We've got 3 speakers for you, and we've got 2 hours. And in the first hour you will hear the speakers, and in the second hour there will be time and opportunity for you to take part in the discussion, and I do hope you do so. But I'd love to know who we've got in the audience. So, the architects, will you please raise your hand? Whoa, okay. That might be the biggest group. Have we got developers here as well? Okay, well you have to do that with the 2 of you. That will be good. And any persons from, say, government, local government, municipality? Good, great that you're here as well. And who have I missed? Others? Hey, Hubert John, you're another.
Sorry about that.
And Renee, we've got advisors. So we've got, it's a nice mix. And have we got students? Yeah. Well, glad you're here too, otherwise we would have a big generation problem. So it's been good to have you here as well. Thank you. Just before we get started, I do hope you would put your mobile phone on soft or off. That makes it much easier to keep our concentration, so thank you for that. Our program. I'm giving a small introduction, and then we have 3 speakers. The first one will be Lars Rutte. He works at Tangram Architects. He will talk about the use of AI in the daily practice as he does at the moment. After that, we will have Firas Al-Sahaf. He works at the Technical University in Delft. He has worked together with Tangram, and he has been measuring dimension design principles. So it's really a very specific thing, but it's really using the research and putting that together with design. And then we have Bart Mispel-Vlombeyer from Tangram. he is very keen on researching the soft values and to use AI to actually translate that in design. And it also will put the aspect of how you can monitor what actually has happened, and that AI can help you there as well. At 5, I hope that we can start the discussion, give you about an hour, and then we would like to invite you to come with us and have a drink next to the exhibition. And we hope there's so much more to talk about so that we can actually talk about a lot of things afterwards as well. Well, that's our program for now. Lars, I'd like to introduce you a bit more. He was quite surprised. He's already working at Grossman for 10 years already, feeling old. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And as the 1st of November from 2023, he's also associate partner of Grossman. On the website, I'm just going to say what you said on the website from your office, to strengthen the city by working together, developing together, and using design to address social changes, and better in the sense of being more sustainable, healthier, and future-oriented. I hope that you can take us with you with your experiences in AI. The floor is yours.
I will, thank you. All right. Okay, I have to keep it close to my mouth. Okay. Okay, first I'm going to start with a thank you to Bart to participate again in this talk, and to take you on this journey about AI and how we deal with AI in our daily practice. Okay, this is me. I'm Lars Rutten. I work at Grossman, and I'm very pleased to present here at the Technical University at Eindhoven, because it has been some time that I walked last in this building. I think it's around 10 years ago. I graduated 10 years ago, and actually when I studied here, I was taught AutoCAD, and that was in my first and second year, I guess. And well, fast forward 12, 13, 14 years later, we have a lot of technical programs that has passed by. AutoCAD, Revit, parametric design, and now we are at AI. So it goes so fast, this technology. So we have to keep up with that. And at our office we do. The start, why we started with AI. We had actually 2 years ago, I think it was, we had this frustration about, the market was pretty bad, the rising building costs were there, investors were taking back their buildings because they didn't want to invest anymore, and we had this big frustration about, the costs are rising, we have to do something more smart, and AI was coming up. A lot of platforms wrote about it. Yeah, well, this is completely in Dutch, but I guess a lot of the audience is Dutch today. And you see how people wrote about it. Some of the platforms wrote, well, quite neutral about it. So is it stimulating architecture or not? But other platforms like the Architect, they wrote, AI makes the architect brainless. Well, that's our platform. And today I will be talking to you about how we can deal with AI, which is not completely brainless. So to start off with it, what are the pros and the cons of AI? We think AI is pretty good at the speed, of course, because it goes so incredibly fast. There is space for creativity. And what actually is the most important one is that AI is a virtual assistant. I get back to you later about this. That is really important to think about. Okay, how will AI deal with us in the coming future? But what are the cons? Because there are definitely cons. The quality is still a bit lacking, in my opinion. The level of control is pretty hard still. And of course privacy, but I'm not going to talk about that a lot today. And of course the AI can lie, the hallucination part about AI. That's quite strange, because if you give it bullshit, you get bullshit back. So sometimes AI lies to us. So we have to deal with that in a way. Okay, now of course we know how AI works at this moment. Probably everybody tried ChatGPT at a certain point. So we give it a prompt, whether it's in a text, probably it's a text, you get something back. It will be text or it will be an image, and we use it as an inspiration for our buildings. That's how it works now. But if you think about it and how that will develop in the future, because you can also add things to this prompt, it's not pretty hard to think about, okay, we can give AI much more related to our profession. So we can give him kavelpaspoorten in Dutch, so we give him site regulations. These are documents that, for example, municipality sets up. We can give them beeldkwaliteitsplannen, so architectural guidelines. And we give them, for example, a cost. And then it will spit out some variants, some options for our buildings. And then we use it again as an inspiration. So that really raises the question about, okay, AI is taking over our profession. But in a way, I think we still are raising the buttons, you could say, changing the buttons a bit about how we deal with this, how we give AI input. With this thought about, okay, AI is taking over the profession, I asked AI, how does an architectural office look like when AI takes over our profession? And it comes up with this. It's pretty funny that people with virtual reality glasses, it's not really, it's already happening, it's not really in the future. I like this hologrammen that are flying through the whole office. But still, and this greenwashing, of course. And but there's still some kind of connectivity you see on this left image. And that's also what, when I ask ChatGPT, okay, will it take over our profession? And it spits us back. Well, it's, of course, the technical specifications we can do pretty good, but it lacks creativity, it lacks cultural insights, it lacks human interaction and aesthetic judgment. So that's good. Okay, that's good to know. Then it gives us hope. It gives us a little bit more hope about how AI will influence our profession. Okay, then how we deal with AI. Let me take you on this journey about how in our office we deal with AI. And we try to use it on several points in the design process. When this line is a design process, so at first it is a bit of a mess, it goes everywhere, and at a certain point it gets more clear what the design will be. So in this process, during this process, we want to use AI in order to help us with this design process. And at the moment we use, at several points during this process we use it, but of course we want to use it much more, and we constantly trying to get more out of it. Yeah. Okay. So one of the possibilities is, of course, a tender check. In our office, we get a lot of tenders that coming to us, and we constantly have to check all these tenders about, okay, is our office able to deal in this or to participate in this tender? And it takes us a lot of time because one person in our office is constantly checking all these things. And with AI, it is really simple to check whether our company is suitable for these tenders. So that goes quite fast. And that's also a simple example of how this could work. But the more promising thing is, of course, the image creation. And we have several examples of that. Of course, ChatGPT, you know, but all these platforms we use for our images. So we Midjourney, LookX, Prom AI, Run Diffusion, maybe you heard about it or not. Crea we use, and we use Stable Diffusion. And all of them have different purposes. So I think 2 years ago, AI was, well, you type in a prompt, you get something back. And right now you see that AI software is already learning much more about, for example, architecture, specific on architecture. And so LucX and Chrome, they are much better in creating images for architecture. Okay, some examples. So we use it for reference images. So when we deal with a tender and we want to have images that supports our project, we're not searching for it anymore, we're just typing it in. And then, okay, this is a nice example of an inner courtyard with some greenery and playing children. Okay, we can use it. So that's one example. We also use it during our process with our clients. This was an example of an interior that we did, and we did it with our clients. So we asked the clients, okay, what do you want? What kind of materials do you want? And we want to create this mood board. So we typed in during this session. We typed in, okay, we want with these wood materials, soft materials, and then at a certain point we get this left mood board. And then during this process, we actually typed in more and more and more in order to get this right amount of right quality of materials. And yeah, that helped us to get the right materials during this meeting. So it took us 1 hour with our client in order to get to the right result. Also an example is that you can change your image style, and this is a matter of seconds. It goes really fast. So if you have a simple landscape render and you just type in, well, change it to a dusk scene, well, you get a dusk scene, which is way more vivid. We use it to enhance our landscape renders with much better water, with more plants in it. A nice sky to it, and this is also a matter of, well, this took a little bit more time, but I guess 15 minutes, something like that. And that also makes us wonder about how render companies or offices are actually working right now. My prediction is that that kind of companies will be gone in 1 or 2 years. Sketch to render, that also works pretty good. So when we have a sketch and it's a really early phase in the design process, then you just put it in, you give it a prompt next to it. Well, for example, you want this nice terrace in a park setting, and then you get this result. Also in a matter of seconds. Interior, it also works, but in this case we did it in 2 steps because we experienced that it was a little bit harder for AI to get the right result in one time. So we did it actually in 2 steps. So we make this output from Revit. We said, okay, this is just a line drawing. Then you make this kind of a clay render that it looks like an interior. And then at a certain point, you just fit in some other things. And then, yeah, that's also happening with AI. So, for example, the right part, I typed in, well, I want this kind of a nice paneling, a wooden paneling. But then it created a bench, and I think, okay, well, that's also nice. This project, this is a project where we actually combined a lot of things that we do with data, with AI and parametric design, because there was a question from a big developer in the Netherlands, and they wanted to increase their amount of op-top woningen, so that they put houses on top of apartment buildings. And we had a discussion about it, and they said, well, we want to make this building systematics, well, we don't know yet on which buildings are able to put all these houses on top of. So we said, well, we can help you with that because we have a lot of data about it. We have data from housing corporations, from investors. It's just open data. Everybody can have access to it. We know that what kind of year these buildings are built that have a good structure or a good construction, that they are able to build on top of it. And of course, we also get the data from energy labels, because there, if you want to increase the amount of houses, with these extra earnings you get, then it of course is nice to increase the sustainability of the houses underneath. So we did this collaboration and we said, okay, we can get you this data, and then you know who to call. And then our promise to the developer was, okay, if you have this client, then we can give you a sort of this parametric mass model, we can give it to you. And of course, we can make very easy, with AI, we can make all these images. So you get, in 1 week, you get this study about how many houses can go on top of it, the building system, and you have already an image of how it is going to look like. We also do it with existing photos. So here you see a little bit of a process how that's going. So you start with a photo of the environment, and then at first you give them more prompts, and at a certain point it gets better and better and exactly what you want. So it's a little bit like photoshopping actually. It's more or less the same way of doing it.
1 minute.
All right. Then I'm going to end this talk. And now if I'm going to skip, that's a very big, development parametric, but that's going to skip. Then I want to end with 2 things that are actually happening right now, but we didn't do a lot with it yet. But that's why I think AI will take a big step into the 3D world, because right now AI is also able to generate from a 2D image a 3D information. That's really stunning, because this is a 2D image of a piano, and then it creates this 3D mesh out of it with no idea what's actually behind it. So amazing. And the last thing that I wanted to show is this one. Is that it's an impression of a tender we lost, unfortunately. We can still use it for these type of presentations. With one image you can make a movie within 2 or 3 minutes. That you have the idea that you walk through this forest. That's really amazing. So you have this idea that people are walking through the forest, and you have this idea, okay, I'm really there. So that's why that's where I wanted to end it with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lars. One question before Ferris is the next one to talk. You still feel like an architect?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Enough
because,
left?
Yeah, because we really think it's a virtual assistant. It's not something that takes over our profession.
Yeah.
Because like this last slide, I think it's a kind of a Swiss knife. You know? It's something that you use. It's a tool in order to do your process faster or to be more creative or whatever. We don't know yet the extent of it, but it helps us to do things smarter and nicer and easier.
Okay, and a knife with a lot of applications and everything on it.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep.
And this is just the beginning, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it might be that big that you can't hold it in your hand anymore.
That could be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker, we just go on. Discussions and questions will come afterwards. For us, you had a master thesis, and this is a very long sentence, so just bear with me here. I'll give you the mic. It was focused on exploring the development of a human-centered AI model for evaluating soft design criteria to support the design of dementia-friendly architecture in the early stages of design. I'm going to ask you if you can repeat that. You finished your master and now you're working as a staff member at the university?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's great. And you are going to help us, you're going to take us in your journey of your thesis, aren't you?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll do my best.
And a quite different story than last, so we're very curious. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you also for organizing this. Thank you, Bart. So I'm going to take you through a journey in my master thesis. I'm going to do my best to explain it without really losing much of the substance. It's about exploring the topic of human-centered AI in architectural design. But a little bit about me before starting. I moved to the US after graduating high school from Saudi Arabia to start my Bachelor of Architecture education in Philadelphia, and I graduated in 2016. And I started working as an intern architect for an architecture healthcare firm in Philadelphia. And then fast forward, I moved to Dubai to work on different kinds of projects, ranging from residential to commercial and exhibition spaces. And then once the pandemic hit, I decided to pursue my passion, which is in building technology. This is when I enrolled for the master program here at TU Delft, and I just graduated and I moved to Rotterdam, and I'm also learning Dutch along the way. I keep saying next time I'll say more things in Dutch, but we'll see about that. I promised, yes. And I just joined TU Delft as a staff member with the digital technology section. While I was a student at TU Delft, I learned about many projects in the labs that explore the use of AI to predict building performance. We have AI for structural design and optimization. We have AI for building physics, heat balance, energy balance, and daylight analysis. We have AI for circularity and carbon footprint calculations. Overall, what I learned is that AI is really good at capturing numerical data to know which building performance result to which architectural forms result to better performance. And we know that performance is really essential for good design, but what about user experience? This is the question that was posed early on by Bart. User experience was something really important, fundamental, and the architect is supposed to know exactly how the user is experiencing those spaces that they're designing for. And AI right now, for sure, can't really do that. So how can AI begin to understand user experience? Can AI really understand, can it be trained to understand user experience and subjective well-being, such as happiness and well-being? That was kind of the broad question, and I sought to try to define it a bit more to bring more clarity and to narrow down the scope. And what I found really pressing for me, at least aligning with my interests also, is to select one building typology, and I decided to choose the assisted living facility for elderly care, and the users being people living with dementia. So that's the user group that I have to take into consideration. And the design stage that I saw that has the most impact into a final result of design that has a high impact and influence on the well-being of people living with dementia was decisions made in the early stages. So I narrowed down the scope to the early stages of the design. And I'm using an evaluation framework that's already established in the research, environmental design guidelines for dementia-friendly dwellings. So I'm using that as an assessment framework. And the measurement aspect of how to make it quantifiable, I have to choose some form of data to do that, and I used visual and spatial data to describe how spaces are perceived. And the master thesis methodology went into several different phases, but from the beginning my objective was to try to define ways to measure dementia design principles in a way to develop a computational framework that is somehow based on machine learning or AI to help with the design process. Ideally speaking, like every design has to go through a validation by an expert before it goes into construction, just to avoid problematic designs in the end. But the feedback loop between the validation and the early stages is often slow and can lead to extended design changes and longer timelines because of the uncertainty of having someone with a dementia care background to join the design team in the early stages and to be always available. And this is what I'm trying to ask the question here in my master thesis, is if can AI bridge this gap between the early stages and the validation by the expert? How can AI support the design of dementia-friendly architecture in the early stages? Machine learning models are run on data, so in theory, this is really the focus of my thesis. If we're able to collect a data set of floor plan geometry and its description, spatial features, and the assessment results based on the quantification measurements, we can take this data set to deploy it in the early stages of design to hopefully bridge that gap between the early stages and the validation, not to replace the validation part, but to guide the design in the right direction before it goes to the validation, just to minimize the risk on the project. And I'm using a framework that's commonly used in the literature, but there are many frameworks to assess whether a building is dementia friendly or not. This one seemed to be the most comprehensive and perhaps relevant for my thesis. It has 10 dementia design principles that we can measure. Based on this example, we can measure floor plan geometry to see to what extent is it complying with our current understanding of dementia-friendly spaces. And I also had to narrow down 3 dementia design principles that I think has the most influence, or at least the decisions made in the early stages, have a lot of influence on the outcomes of those. Mostly the visual access part that allow people to see and be seen, but also the sound stimulation. And in the document, the assessment tool, it goes to say that if those conditions are met, it can provide improvement in the quality of life of people living with dementia, which can also help them navigate their own environment more independently, which does lead to more personal autonomy and higher quality of life. If those conditions are met by controlling sight lines, we can give the individual the choice to where they want to go in space based on the information that they're receiving, so to boost their confidence to explore their own environments independently. But also the addition of sound and smell stimulation can add as wayfinding signals to help them know where they are in space, which to reduce their confusion as they're navigating their own environment. So that's the assessment part. Wayfinding is the ability for someone to know where they are in space and while planning and following around. So this is the quick, dry definition of wayfinding. And visual access and sight lines, this is something that based on the assessment framework, we can know if this is a place that is conducive for independent wayfinding or not, based on the direct visual access between the key spaces in the building. But why is wayfinding and visual access so important in the early stages? If you look at the critical decisions made during the early stages, the architect has to decide the rough zone layouts for the building, the wall position, the doors and the fixed furniture. This has a direct effect on the indoor navigation quality, the sense of community and environmental stimulation. And during the scope of my thesis, working with experts in dementia care also, I developed 4 soft design criteria to evaluate that an AI could theoretically, hopefully, evaluate whether a floor plan gives a sense of personal autonomy or a sense of connection, and the stimulation, how is it helping with wayfinding. But my focus was mostly in the visual access, so we can measure directly the visual access using visual sight lines. For example, in the assessment framework, it asks if the kitchen is visible from the living room, and if that condition is met, it gets a score. Is the nearest toilet visible? That gets a point. Is the bedroom visible from the living room? That gets a score. So we can have all kinds of measurements that we can take from different spaces and give us an estimation of how good it is for wayfinding. And this is the overall measurement scheme. On the left, this is the dementia design principles it's based on. And in the middle, these are the items that are guided by the checklist from the assessment framework, which is mostly visual sight lines. And then on the right is the soft criteria that we hope that AI could try to intuitively understand based on floor plan geometry. And I'm using the isovist method. It's a point in space that draws out lines. And based on the intersection the line makes with other spaces, we know if this point in the space have seen the other room or not. It's just as straightforward as that, but I'm not using one point, I'm using a collection of points in the living room, so each point can produce isovist, and then we can measure whether the kitchen has been seen or not from the living room space. And then I'm defining a threshold for when it is really acceptable and when it is not acceptable, and I'm doing this purely for data set balance, because I want to have a balanced distribution of floor plans that has good and bad quality, but this can be improved later. And then based on the number of checkpoints or the points that satisfy this, we can give it a score, whether it's insufficient or sufficient or preferred. And this is done inside of Grasshopper, so I'm using a data set that's publicly available. It's called the Swiss Dwellings Dataset, and it has basically an Excel file that has floor layouts, and I'm automatically populating the living room and then measuring the direct sight lines between the living to the kitchen, living to the nearest toilet, and we can also measure all the different key spaces from and into each other. And then we have a data set that's the floor plans and the assessment results, and at the end, this is the end of my thesis, I have a data set that has building geometry information and the spatial features. That's its own data set, and I have the visual axis data, which I used with the ISOVIS method to measure. And if we combine this together, we can create some sort of visual axis quality that can give us an estimation to what extent is this really good in terms for wayfinding and navigation based on the assessment framework. And we can introduce new building geometry, or at least the spatial features of it that the model hasn't seen before. It can give us an indicator. How many of those checklist items has it met based on the building geometry features? So that's the hope, is that the floor plan geometry will be enough to give us an estimation about how good it is in terms of subjective experience. But the study is really limited because the data collected here I'm only using for a machine learning model. I don't exactly know when a place is sufficient or insufficient. This really needs more research and studies to understand the relationship between visual sightlines and wayfinding. No user validation of people living with dementia was done in this study, and I'm only taking visual axis as a data or as a performance indicator. There are other wayfinding indicators that are not visual axis that has not been included in my thesis. But the key takeaway message here is that AI really is potential AI assistant for the architect. I really believe that it can bridge the knowledge in the time gap where the knowledge is not available in the early stages. It can try to make it available. It won't be perfect, but at least it will guide it in the right direction and to minimize that time between the validation and the early stages. The main takeaways here is that human-centered AI is context and typology specific. We really have to rethink this for every building typology and for every user group. It's not impossible, it's not rocket science, but we have to be really aware of the user typology and how they interact with their own spaces. And quantifying user experience as a performance indicator, just like we do it for structural performance or thermal performance, can potentially be done, but we have to be careful what soft criteria matter the most and which criteria really are the most critical to address in the early stages of design to make this more seamless for the architect to design better spaces. AI tools need interdisciplinary collaboration between the architect and the computer scientist, environmental psychologist to make this really scientifically grounded and more useful for the architect in the end. Thank you.
We asked quite a lot of you to put a thesis into 15 minutes, but thank you very much. It was very clear to me, at least. Do you think that architects are going to need a lot of you? For us, we need a lot of people like you to actually be doing the work, helping them to get the data actually feasible for architects?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Also with the help of not only architects, but computational designers.
Okay.
Architects that have programming experience that can help with quantifying the soft values that are really important for their projects. I think that's something that's already happening.
And they do have to understand what an architect does to make spatial designs. Or do you say it's something special, only computer work?
I don't think it can be done without the sensibility of the architect. I don't think it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
So I hope that's
not possible.
I hope that helps everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you later in the discussion. The last speaker is Bart Mispelton-Beyer. He works at Tangram. He's a partner there, and it's a Tangram Architects and Urban Landscape. He's been there since 1990. He's interested in designing future-proof building and giving soft values a place in design. He and the whole office consider research of very great importance in the designing profession. Tangram is one of the parties who is actually responsible for the exhibition that is up here, the Immeasurably Important. It's a roadshow, and it has travelled from Alkmaar to the new institute in Rotterdam, Haarlem, and is currently here. It will then go on, and it will go to Delft, Zwolle, and Antwerp. When I asked Bart, why did you participate in this exhibition and in the meetings, he said he wants awareness of AI for all the participants here in the process of designing and architecture. And he said we all have to be conscious of what it can, but also what it cannot do for you. And he's going to tell us more about that. So the floor is yours, Bart.
Thank you very much, Erna. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have seen two things already. I think you can say AI is everywhere. We read it in the newspapers every day. I think you can say it's inevitable. We have to deal with it. We have to learn to work with it. When applied properly, it can be a great help. On the other side, when applied badly, it can harm people's well-being. So the question is, how are we going to do it properly? I think you can say that most architects use AI, the ones that use it already, but use it as an image generator, but it's more than that, because this is a new, really a new class of tools when you compare it to Revit or Photoshop or whatever. It has the ability to sort of think creatively, and well, that's exactly what it is about. So I take it through a few schemes, not too much. I want to show you a few concrete examples to bring the message over. But let me take you through it really quickly. Machine learning process is really what we're dealing about. So this is how it works from data to a AI-generated design, not just an image, a real design. In between we have the algorithms, we have a learning system, and we have a trained model. I'm not going to talk about the algorithms and the learning in itself. It's an iterative process. We can say this system improved really heavily in the past years because of increasing computing power. You could say the challenge, the real challenge is about the data, because the data are the real fuel for the motor that's consists of these algorithms and this learning system. And you can say the model knows only what the data describe. At the moment, data, the definitions of data, is quantifiable facts and figures. And you see a list here of the facts and figures, Lars showed them already, that we have to deal with as architects, developers, and so forth. And those are costs, square meters, facade factors, zoning, energy use, etc. Those are the things you can measure, and they are quantifiable. So that's why we are going to put this in our AI design models. And you can already do a lot of things with it, apart from the examples that Lars showed. Here you see, for example, this digital twin from Tangram. They are on the exhibition as well. Tangram is a public data platform, and for example, it's possible to check designs, new developments in an urban situation, for example, on its behavior of noise or pollution or whatever, or heat stress, etc. So it's really helpful. But as I said, you can only use these hard values at the moment, and this means a simplification of our design task, of course, because there's so much more that counts. Let's say the quality of a living environment is at risk of being compromised if you don't take them in your considerations of your design. And we certainly need a more sustainable mindset. I hope you don't pass away when you see this, but this is a triangle that we always use, that the triangle of sustainable development consists of physical factors, socio-cultural factors, and economical factors. You could say the list on the left side, those are the physical factors, but we don't take the other two circles in consideration. I put them on a list. These are factors to deal with that really matters. And this is what we call soft values. They are highly complex and hard to quantify in data. That's exactly what Faraz just showed us. So we're talking about social connection, identification with your environment, intuitive use of the environment, historical awareness, a balance with nature, value streams, etc. Those are really important matters. You could even say, are these not the real values that determine the quality of the long term of your design? So, if we are not able to quantify them yet, how are we going to deal with them in the AI design models? I want to show you two concrete examples of our work where we applicated the soft values and that turned out to be the real hard values for the project. And one of them is not coincidental, a provision for people with dementia. This is where for us we found each other, and it's about stimulation, wayfinding, orientation, and results in comfort and well-being. The second one, is about community feeling and participation. Those are two of the themes that you find up there in the exhibition, where we have 4 of these main themes from a long list that matter for good architecture and good urban design. Community feeling is about social contact, support and belonging, cooperation and mutual aid. And it has to, and appreciation and acceptance. How do you get to that? Let me start with Zuidhoeven. This is our project on the Zuidas, the southern axis in Amsterdam. And the question that we got from care organization Cordaan was to make a better building for the usual program with a usual budget. So come up with a new idea for people that suffer from dementia and have an need an indoor house. This is the usual solution. We all know. The rooms with corridors, rooms are really without any atmosphere. We have cold corridors and a central meeting space. Everybody who has visited his grandma or his mother living here knows it's a disaster. This is what we should not do. But if you look at existing floor plans, the ones that feed AI at the moment have this principle. But what happens is that people living here suffer from loneliness, and they get passive and they need more medicine. So we have to do it better. So how can you come up with another concept for the same kind of program? This is the floor plan layout that we used, and the key principle that we wanted to bring in this design is activate and socialize the population, because that's the only way not to get lonely. And what we did was introducing in the floor plan wandering zones. You could say, hey, these people have dementia, so they will get lost. Okay, then we have to solve that problem. But when they wander there, they meet each other. When they meet each other, they help each other. And this reduces the demand for care, and people feel better. That was our theory. So what you see is in the dark gray, sort of ring of apartments. Around the center part, a greenhouse, a winter garden. And in between you see the light gray parts, the islands, where the people move in between and find their way. We added some more ideas on the stimulation movement. For example, no dead ends. People walking and do not know the way. They tend to end to a wall, and they don't even understand that they have to turn around anymore. So you made circuits, and while being in a circuit, you need mental mapping, so you know every time you know where you are. In fact, what we did was bringing in a barrier to encourage the relationship, and this is the spatial key of the building's success. You can ask, because this is sort of paradoxical solution, can you ever teach this to an AI model? At the moment, not, because this concept exists right now from this one building, but didn't do that before. And we use more than just this. We stimulate all senses for people that lose their cognitive abilities to bring them where they want to be. So differences in finishes, guiding sightlines everywhere, that's what the mental mapping is about, differences in light levels, and even the smell of open kitchens bring people to the center of the building, where they all meet in this greenhouse, where they can stay outside almost all year. And this is the part where people come together and they meet. This is a much better solution. Do I have any proof? Yeah, I do have any proof. Because Cordaan, this care organization, noticed that they have, in this building, they have lower demand for care, less medication use, and a much lower burnout ratio for the personnel. How come? Or let's say more important, what does that mean? It's a much better business model for them. So people are happier, and Cordaan is a building that earns itself back. So you could say soft values, this is hard value. And I think current AI design models would never have come up with such a solution. So my statement right now is to design a pleasant living environment, you need to understand human spatial experience. Second example, a little bit shorter, is our project Rhapsody in West, which is a large residential project at the A10 highway in Amsterdam. Here you see the construction site before we started. It's not just an empty site at the highway. No, when we started in 2013, we found a deprived neighborhood, the Kodekit, which was by then renowned as the worst neighborhood in the Netherlands. Much low employment rates, low educational levels, much criminality, so not per se a place for success. And then we had this noise and pollution problem, so we had to do something special. Again, we had a normal program for housing, we had a normal budget. But the standard interpretation would not give the solution for this question. So what did we do? I have to cut it short, so with big steps. At first we had to make it physically livable by taking the noise out of the living area. So we used noise bouncing walls at the sides, and at the other side open and friendly soft forms that sort of guide the rest of the noise out. People right now that live there say, hey, you don't hear anything, there's no noise anymore. There is noise, but because we put in a complete park with water and greenery, your head doesn't see it anymore, it doesn't hear it anymore, but it is still there, of course. We made all exterior space public accessible, which was not an easy decision because of the high criminality. At first people said, you're crazy, we need fences, we need to fence it off. We said, no, you have to open it and make it for the whole neighborhood. That will be the solution. This is our end project. It's a green oasis, it's a social hub for the whole neighborhood, and it has been a booster for the whole Kodekit neighborhood, for the renewal of it. This is what happens at summer days. At the center of it all, we put this glass greenhouse. People grow vegetables there. They cook together. They cook for people that don't have too much money there. They give courses and parties, etc. It's a new social focal point. This is not how would you say it, engineered and seen. It's reality. At the moment that we were there, this is what's happening. We got a lot of prizes for the project, urban architecture, and even for the area development. Much more important is that some parties went there to monitor the behavior of this planet, and the most important one is the Research Institute for Public Health, RIVM in the Netherlands, researched this plan for half a year to see what happened and what was the influence on the rest of the neighborhood. And their conclusion was that this is has been a really strong incubator for the rise in the quality of the whole neighborhood. So, again, I'm talking about community feeling, which is really a soft value, but this approach had a huge impact on the real estate value, not only for this project, but for the whole neighborhood. Community spirit, of course, was the goal, and that is not achieved by just making a plan. The process, the way to the plan is as important as that. So you need stakeholder participation. First question, of course, was how do we reach this local residents? But finally it worked, and we made sort of a bottom-up, top-down team. It cost a lot of time, but by teaming up, we bring in transparency in the plan and acceptance from the neighborhood. Instead of that they saw the plan as an enemy, they saw it as a friend, it became their plan. Of course, quid pro quo, when you take something from people, you have to bring something back. So, in this process of participation, the developer and the real estate investor, CBRE, was sort of forced, but they did it happily, but giving more than they intended to do. So this greenhouse I already mentioned, the Valley is in there, that's a coffee corner, but that's for people to sit there and work. We have a little cultural center, the Makam. We have a caretaker's house, really important to open the public to the center of to the public, and we have 4 community managers that live there for lower rent, and they organize all kinds of activities. That is what makes it work. The question is, could you have known this before? Because by working this way, we changed along the way, we changed the program to make it work. And the question is, how do you ever teach this to AI models? So this brings me back to the beginning. Machine learning process and the machine learning design process is much about self-learning, deep learning, and that's a non-transparent system. So what you could ask yourself, is AI the enemy of stakeholder involvement? That's an interesting discussion that I want to, as a cliffhanger, I want to bring in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a question for you. And did you use AI in these projects?
By then? 2014? No.
No. You didn't have any idea of the ability of using it?
By then, no.
No. If you were to do it now, what would you do? What would you do differently?
I say no, it's not completely right, because I showed this Tangram model.
Yeah.
So we checked the hard values of noise pollution and heat stress. So, but I think this is sort of halfway AI, you know, but it is already AI. But not in the way that I describe it, to help us coming up with original ideas that were necessary to solve the question.
Yeah.
And that's what interests me, not to repeat what we already know, but to come up with new ideas. And it seems a little contradictional to what AI is about, because at the moment it has this millions floor plans, but there might be all not usable. And then what you do? Yeah. So you need a person's head, I guess, and I completely agree with Firas. There's a sort of triangle between researchers, architects, and software developers necessary in maybe in a development group to bring AI further and make it workable as an AI design assistant.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Well, now the floor is going to be yours, and I'm going to ask the speakers to come here. You can choose whether you want to have a chair or you're just going to keep standing.
Hello, my name is Andre. I'm a developer currently. I guess the question is for the whole panel. In the age of AI, what do you think is needed from the developer as a client or principal in the process to improve the design brief for you as an architect?
Was that clear for everybody? So, being a developer, how are you going to give a very good briefing to the designers, and how can you include AI in that? Well, who wants to start with the answer?
I
Okay,
start.
we'll go from left to right. Go ahead.
It's a good question, I think. You can also say what is not needed, because one of the reasons to start this exhibition project at all was that I see developments where AI is used to make it quicker and less expensive, without taking into consideration that you miss half of the value of the whole thing. So what's necessary is this awareness what it can do and what it cannot do, and that's a great help. Like Lars, it can be a great help, especially in a time where rules and regulations are piling up, etc. But let's make this a joint journey to develop how we improve the quality of the design instead of making it just quicker and let's say dirtier. So that's my feeling to this. Lars.
I might add something as well. Andre, do you think that the developer should use the IA himself in the briefing? Or do you mean it in a different way?
Well, I think I mean it both ways. We can use AI to improve the briefing, but if we need to understand the process of the architect a little bit more, and the changing process with AI for the architect, then maybe it changes the way we should brief the architect or ask the question, or I don't know. But that's what I'm wondering. What do you think? What's your opinion? I don't have the answer yet. But, yeah, I think both ways. But the second thing is, I think, more important, but intrigues me a little bit more. Should we rephrase our design briefings to come up with better solutions for you using AI?
Okay. Well, Lars?
Well, it's a broad question. But, I think, in general, I think it's really interesting if you talk about giving a question from the developer to the architect. I think it's really interesting to think about not make the question about what it actually about really hard data, but more about how it should act. Like how the environment should act, or that. And I think AI can help you with that, and help you with raising the question about it. And the second thing that I wanted to add is that you can also ask AI about what do I miss, for example. So if you load a document in, or do you think, well, right now I'm here, and I think, well, it misses something, you can also ask it, what do I miss? And I sometimes do it with, for example, tenders, when I wrote my vision about it, and I put in the criteria, and I said, okay, now this is my vision, but is it complete? Do I miss something? Is the emphasis on something wrong or not? That could also help with improving the question about what I'm going to ask.
Okay, well, I'm curious what Pharrell says about how it's about the relationship between the developer and the architect using AI to get started, actually.
No, I think Bart and Lars already gave wonderful answers, but maybe if we think about AI as a tool or as a solution, maybe the question is what is the pain point that you discover between the communication between the developer and the architect, that AI can intervene there and make things smoother. And if we identify the pain points in specific, I think we can find more practical use case scenarios that AI can be useful, because I think this is not something that's in my, never tested it, but I know large language models can be useful for like summarizing new building codes and regulation. They can be fine-tuned to, for example, the municipality of Eindhoven to give you the main things that you need to consider at what stage, for example. But I really am not sure if that's a pain point, if everyone is really familiar with the regulations, but maybe if you're working in a municipality that's not too familiar with, then maybe it becomes really handy to have that kind of like quick legal consultation with an AI.
Well, my experience is that if you stack all the regulations, they're never all the same. And sometimes you have to choose a bit more of it and a bit less of that. It's not that black and white when it comes to the regulations. And a bit of movement here means more shade, more sun, more noise, more wind. It's more about the modelling. And so it's not like if you put all the regulations in, you really know, all right, this is what I have to do.
Maybe I can add something,
Yeah.
because it's really, it makes me thinking. A plea for a more open question.
Okay.
Because with AI we are able to discover even more variations for a program on the location. We used at Tangram never to make what our clients asked. Now we made something better in the program. Mostly that means we make more program on the same location with quality. This is what disturbs me with the current tender layouts, because it's completely fixed and it takes away a USP of the architect, that he can be cleverer, he or she, for the same site, making something better. We just lost a tender because on a dementia care center again, because we did not do what the municipality had as a layout, which was completely stupid what they had. That was one of the examples I showed not to do. So we said to our client, we do something better. And we were kicked out because they said, there's no proof that it works. There is a proof that it works. So my plea is here, let's break it open, and it's maybe more to the tender, the municipalities than to the developers, but on the other hand, developers determine the programs as well. So this research phase, before even making a plan, I think AI can help us with that. But I think on the other hand, a good architect might not need even the AI, but he has to do it anyway. But that's a very a change that we have to make, a change back we have to make.
Yeah, Lars?
Maybe I have one other example. We did several tenders in Amsterdam, and usually in Amsterdam it's all like these building envelopes are really fixed.
Yeah.
It's just exactly
yeah.
what it should be. And because the urban designers think of it, and they think of it pretty good, sometimes pretty bad. But in my opinion, it should not go like this, because the envelope is pretty fixed, because they want to send you to, okay, this is how the volume should like. But if you raise the question about, for example, okay, there should be sunlight on the street, and then the architect can come up with different ideas about how the building should look like, not that it's really just fixed. And AI is getting better and better and can help us with this design process.
Yeah. So what you actually need is space enough for creativity. That's actually what they want, more space for creativity, yeah, Andre. So I hope you can get that on your side.
And that doesn't contradict the revenues for the project. That's really important.
Because that could be one of the things that you give with you. This is the revenue I need, and how are we going to get that?
Yeah.
So it's more the open questions. So I'm hoping that helps you. Any other person with a question? Yes.
Hi, my name is Immeasurably, and I'm working at the urbanism department of the municipality, but I graduated very recently.
Okay, so you're on two things. You're okay, lovely, and young, yes.
So you mentioned that AI cannot design this kind of soft architecture with the laundry spaces in this example. However, Blas did like a research on also people with dementia and how they could improve the architecture with AI. And I think that's based on existing data sets already and on existing literature, and you get like these indicators that influence people with dementia and how they interact with their architecture. So wouldn't it be possible if AI also has these data sets and this literature? Do you think it won't be possible right now, very in the recent future, that AI will be able to kind of create spaces with this kind of soft architecture based on research?
Wow. Got the question?
Yeah, I got the question. It's not that AI is not, the models are not able to design it, but that we are not able to quantify most of these data, the soft criteria. The interesting thing, and it's exactly the reason that Taras is here in our game, is that he's the one that tries to break some of these codes. And that's really amazing. But I let him say it, but my interpretation of what Taras has done is it's really complex. And whereas we need to take 25 or so important points into consideration, it took for us almost a year to break half of the code of 3 only. So that's the whole thing. We're just starting. But I'm curious what Faraz is saying about it. So it's not will it ever do it? No, it's at the moment not possible. Maybe we get to do this, and we need guys like Faraz, but then we need the other architects as well to fuel what it is about, because we talked a lot about dementia care and what really matters. So it's no software development problem. It's just what I said before. We need each other, and maybe we can get it further. I'm convinced of that, really.
For us, what have you got to say and to add?
I think, Bart and me, if we put our heads together, maybe we can come up with something really nice. I think the reason also why I chose the assisted living facility or the dementia care, because the literature is already really, really strong and well researched for quite some time. And I think if we focus on what kind of setting, if it's an urban setting, there might be some kind of well-being, happiness indicators that can be quantified. And as soon as I hear this soft value can be quantified, I get excited, challenge accepted. It's like nothing can be measured, everything can be measured, but you really have to find the right way to measure it. And the harder it is, the more abstract it is, it just means there needs to be more research or studies. But for the most part, I feel like there's already enough literature, especially I think in the urbanism field. I'm not too exactly sure, but there's enough to know what are some things that correlate with higher quality of life or less sickness or etc. So that's something that can be quantified, and that's one aspect of it. But then the other aspect is that where is the pain point in the design process? So we also have to insert the model in a really useful place that can support the architect or the developer to make critical decisions at the time that they need it. So that's something has something to do with maybe software design. How does the user interact with this tool? What kind of decisions are they receiving? How are they receiving it? And how are they asking for that feedback? Or is it generating options? Because now AI obviously can generate options. Do we want the AI to generate, or is it only just to validate and estimate the quality before it goes into a further stage in the process? Because generation, I think, is a whole different aspect of AI that I'm not sure exactly if can be implemented without real human supervision. The architect is never really placed outside of this equation. The AI tool is always there to help, but then the responsibility falls under the architect. Even in the case of evaluation, it needs to be properly assessed by engineers or by whoever. So the AI is not something that's going to be solving everything.
Not on its own anyway. No.
The reason to be at the technical universities at all is that I think the research should be done here.
Okay.
But not only here, it's a really cross-disciplinary question. For example, behaviorists are really important here. In fact, at our office, she's here today, Anissa, she's a trainee, but she is a student at the University of Leiden, neuropsychology, researching with the professor on the specific case of Zuidhoever. Why does it work like it works? So, and this is fuel that we need again to adapt our ideas. I could imagine that the technical universities have a work group or whatever. Right now you have to really look to find somebody here that does anything at all on AI. So we have to speed it up, make a work group maybe between here and Delft, but other faculties as well, like what I said in Leiden.
Yeah. What really interests me is how the hard and the soft values come together, which actually always happens in urbanism and spatial and architecture and buildings. And that happens that we need that in AI as well, that they come together. Yeah. Is that clear enough for you as an answer? Yes? Great. Anybody else with a question? Margriet? Margriet is an architect.
Yes, Margriet Klink, I'm an architect indeed. And I do a lot of buildings also for care and dementia. What you see is that especially the soft things,
values
that they change every 10 years. And that's influenced by costs or how the society looks at certain people. So we saw in Holland, we built in the 70s, we built elderly homes for a lot of people. Then it came to smaller groups, and now we tend to diversity. How does, I know AI is fast, but all those influences that are different country-wise or political-wise or whatever, how do you cope with those changes? Because as we human beings, we adapt every day. We read something new, we are confronted, and we change our seeing of how to solve problems. So how does you have to constantly feed the AI in that? So how do you cope with that?
Is the question clear? Yeah?
It's pretty clear.
Okay, good.
I think let's first start with the generic eternal principles. We are all human beings. We haven't changed that much since 1,000 years. Like wanting to have social contact, things like that. So that's something that's certain that you need to bring in your design and facilitate with your design. And then we have these changing policies. Intramural or extramural or whatever, but it's still about people. And I remember lectures from Herman Hertzberg who showed all over the world, even in Yemen to Russia, to Peru, etc., how people live together, some in clay and other in wood and whatever, but everywhere the principles were the same, with the privacy, public spaces, spaces in between where people meet, etc. Those are generic principles, but they're what we call right now still the soft values. First, let us learn to deal with them, and this works for bigger facilities, smaller facilities, it's the same. It brings you different buildings, but the principles are the same. So we have to master these like we master them as architects. When we want to work with AI, we have to bring this in the data and in the model.
I think policies, aren't they just changing on hard values, not that much on soft values, actually?
They are.
I mean, it's more about money.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
We all know about the green environment and how to live healthy, but sometimes it isn't even possible, money-wise or whatever. And of course, it's very interesting that you show with your project that that you gain money with it, but it's exactly that difficulty.
Well, I think what you did with monitoring is actually gaining the proof that you can show that to paying more attention to the soft values will actually add to the hard values as, euros.
Why this is so important? Because everybody who sees the images always say, okay, but this is way too expensive.
Yeah.
And that's what we always hear. And then I say, hey, this Rhapsody cost a little bit more than 1,000 euros per square meters. Nobody believes it, but it is so. So it's right on the soft value. It's really compact. So the facade factors were really clever. You know, all these things. We hardly needed any provisions to keep the noise up because the principal concept already does this. So this is the, let's say, the intellect of the design, and which creates the openness to make an atmosphere. I think this is what architecture is about, the combination of soft and hard values. And the same counts for Zuidoever. It has a really strong netto gross factor. Nobody believes it, but that's true, because we hardly have any brutto spaces. It's all using spaces. So we could give it a higher level of finishes, for example, because we had money left within a normal budget to bring it to a higher level, for example, to bring the whole greenhouse in. So by thinking of differences in concepts, you can lift it up.
Actually, it comes really close to what Andre is talking about, because if you give a briefing and you already have an idea what it's going to look like, and you actually make it a closed briefing, because there's hardly any space for creativity, because you know this is the way it should look like. You're not giving any space for creativity, and you're doing nothing new. You're doing what you knew already. So I can imagine that that's one of the major issues that we've got. They're actually, with the tender, what Lars said as well, they make it too close. There's no space left for creativity. And you need that to find different solutions. And what I think could be interesting is the use of AI may be helpful in making it, turning it into hard values as well, using it, getting the information out as well, and putting that back into the process. Yeah, Lars?
Maybe I can add one thing, is that AI is also pretty bad at doing predictions. AI is of course a self-learning machine, so you put data in and you get something back. So that's also, I think AI is based on probability. So if you, for example, if you raise a question, if you give a question to ChatGPT or whatever, a large language model, then it gives you back the most probable answer. So, and it never gives you the exact same answer. So that's also a thing about AI. It will not predict something. It will give you output or data, and then the most probable answer.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be the solution for the architect. René?
You mentioned in the introduction that it fascinates you, AI, but it also frightens
Terrifies.
you.
Yeah.
But what is actually then the terror? What is your fear with AI?
Well, maybe I'm just going to ask if they have fears as well. Do you have fears when it comes to AI?
The fear I have is that the way that we are working with AI, and we're still thinking about how to deal with AI, that's a good way of working with it, I would say. The fear is a bit that, for the students here in this in this area, that the first answer that AI gives you, that they take it for granted. That's a bit my fear, because AI is not that far that it will give you this exact answer on the first question that it gives you. So it comes really fast and it works really fast, but you still have to think, okay, is this the correct answer? And it's already getting better and giving the sources of what kind of, from what do they get the information. So that's my fear.
And you also said hallucinations then?
Hallucinations.
Hallucinations, yeah. Okay, Bart, your fear.
It's about data again, because we do as if data is, or maybe we do not do it, but as if it's something what is. No, it's what might be, or it's manipulated, or so where do they come from? Except, for example, every time we walk in the Albert Heijn, we are monitored because of our cell phones.
Yep.
Older people still tend to have no cell phones. So when you ask yourself what's the behavior of what people do in the Albert Heijn, they forget this whole group. So it's just an example.
Yep.
So how exact are these, especially the softer data? Where do they come from? And then the manipulation is something different, because between data and policy lies ethics, religion, ideas, politics, etc.
So data that may come through and may not come through.
Yeah, with the same data, Geert Wilders says the one and Frans Timmermans says the other. So, and in the policy making, that's where it happens. That's where we make the program of activities that lead to a design. So, and it depends of the interpretation of the data, what program of activities we get, so what design we get. So this translation in this circle is really something that we should be worried about, or that we have to strengthen, or whatever, that we need to master. How can you say it? But if we think if we take it for granted, that's a risk.
That's a risk.
And that's what's happening all the time with social media, for example. People take it for granted, which is stupid.
Okay, for us, where is do you have a fear when it comes to AI?
I think general AI, I have a lot of fears about it, just generally, everyday life, but specifically in design. I think I can think of 2, maybe 3, but the first one is that maybe, as you said, maybe the data is not quite representative of people's interests. So like if we do go in that route of soft design criteria model that is intuitive, just like the architect, then who really gets to decide what is the ideal subjective user experience that an AI should give or tell? And in the case of dementia care, for example, these are really hard set guidelines and checklists, so it made my work a lot easier. But then still, there are a lot of debates about which assessment guidelines for dementia-friendly dwellings are actually the ones that we should follow. There are multiple available, and each one uses it differently, regionally, maybe different organizations have different opinions, so that's still also a debate, but maybe that's not necessarily a fee, but that's more of a diversity thing. It's good to have different opinions, it's good to build on each other. That's one, I think, concern. The other concern is that we can be overly reliant on the answers that we can get from the AI, to the extent that maybe we can take a bad idea all the way to the end, and then find out the hard way that it was really bad. So I think that's a concern, but I think that for the time being, AI is not going to replace like the traditional auditing process, I think. So at least for the time being, we're safe, but maybe in the future, that AI just can give you like calculations for structural details, for example. And that becomes a health hazard. And the third one, obviously, is privacy, because like the data, whatever data it is, then if it's going to be collected from real people also, everything I did in my thesis was just synthetic on the computer and simulations, but if it is from real people, real experiments, and there's also a question about the privacy of that.
Well, and what I also have this feeling is going so quick, can I keep up? That's something that really takes my breath away. So, like, can I be quick enough to get the right questions, to be aware of what's happening? So it's like in a rat race, and you don't know where the end is. So that was my fear anyway. Are there any other questions here in the audience? I've got one for Bart. You entered with others a certain plan. It was a couple of years ago in Stad van de Toekomst. It's the city of the future. And you had a statement there that you said, the planning that we have been using all this time with master plan, that's not going to be successful in the future. We need a different way. And we need a way of urban planning where we actually have a good role in the process for the participation of local people, the people living there, the local participants. You actually ask, could AI help there? I think it's one of the 4 things that comes up in the exhibition as well. Can you explain a bit of that?
Yeah. What was particularly interesting about this project, I hope some of you know it, but it was about the Knoop XL, which is huge. It's whole Vellenoord, was about 1.5 million square meters of new provisions, housing, etc. And it's a plan that right now is actually being developed by KCRP, I believe. Our statement was you need to give a structural place to uncertainty, because this is a development that will last at least 25 years. And depending on what's happening in the world, is what we think right now might differ from what we think in 5 years or 10 years even. So if you make a master plan, it's pretty stupid to make a fixed master plan, which maybe happens right now, I don't know. So how could you do that differently? So how could you make a sort of fluid strategy for urban design? And then to make it even more difficult, Eindhoven is a really specific place. We researched, of course, it consists of 6 or 7 villages that come together, and in the middle, which is to be the center, is nothing. It's Vellenmoord. It's empty. So this place here is really important. It will bring everything together. So all the people living in the different neighborhoods will have a say and will have an opinion. So what we tried in our chapter, which is called the Flexible City, was to design a strategy where we could bring non-professionals in as well, while you have these big themes like climate change, like mobility, like the economic thing. Well, it's a whole list. Too hard to digest for many of the people. So how can you bring them in seriously and give them a serious role in thinking along?
In a
complex setting like this, with a time frame of 25 years.
Yeah.
Many people would say it's impossible, but you can do it if you break the big questions into smaller questions. And what we did was, in fact, gamification. So we made an urban transition game on themes, analog, right then, because that was the only way we could get everybody around the table. We wanted to do it digital, but later on, think about Monopoly or something. It looked a little bit like that. And we tried it out with the municipality, with people from the government, the central government, with some developers at the table. So with real people in their roles. And of course it was a play, but just to see if we could get to a sort of coalition agreement on the most important topics. So where this is policy, before bringing it in a design. And then the next step was, okay, we have this coalition agreement, we got to a coalition agreement, and how can we write a program of activities, and how can we translate this in a fluid urban strategy, which can have different outcomes. I have a few pictures, but everybody can read it in the book Stad van de Toekomst.
It's still a download available if you want
it's still
to.
There. It was really an interesting experiment because it worked.
And AI, how is that going to help you then?
I told you this transition game was analog. By then already we were Tangram, the data platform, was in our team. And they already did this digital. And the good thing about it is that doing it with AI, we could sit on the table and directly show the consequences of choices. Because the difficult thing is that choices are, you cannot combine everything. For example, we want a park over there and the train must go underneath. Then say, oh, now we have a cost problem, minus $2 billion, you know, so or euros. When you want the train underneath, you need at least a lot of program to balance the costs. And there were people, that's an aha like this, you know. So with the help of AI, we could show it immediately. And Tangram is already doing this right now in several locations. For example, in the center of Utrecht, they have built a plan. It's to be seen in our exhibition. And so this helps people, normal, non-professional people, or at least not on development, to see what choices mean. Then you can get them into the game in a serious way.
Yeah.
So that's where it can help. While on the other hand, in the design I showed, it is a closed black box system. The design itself is a problem, but this is a real opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else with a different question? Is this clear about how it can help in participation as well? Yes? Have you got questions for one another? Are you still pleased with your roadshow?
Maybe not a question, but I think I'm just realizing this. I think, Bart, you have the sensibility and the intuition of an architect. Lars, you use the cutting-edge technology and everything, and I'm here measuring things. I think we should put together a team.
Well, I think that's one of the things that you said before. We need bigger teams to do this, and teams with different features and different knowledge and different ways of looking at it all.
We need to have them, and it's urgent.
Yeah.
For the simple reason
Yeah.
that it's already happening. I believe already 50 municipalities order area development plans from software offices.
Yeah.
AI, so not architects, not urbanists, to find out, let's say, 10 models and then give it to an architect to say, okay, give me a facade and we're ready. So that's the end of our profession. But
Okay, if it goes that way. And you do have that fear?
I know that it happens, so
Okay,
yes.
so you do have that fear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any municipality people here doing it that way already? No, I don't see anybody saying yes. Yeah. Well, actually, you come back to where Andre started. That it's the briefing part, and even the municipality. If you do this and you make it all very closed, where is the creativity and how are we going to get good solutions? So it comes back to the same point, actually. Then. Yeah. And I think, how much do you really know then in advance? What is the certainty of what I said, all the layers, if you put them together? It's still, some human has to think of this, this is more important than that, and how am I going to add 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 all together then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what policy is about.
Yeah.
For example, for Eindhoven, we used for the Stad van de Toekomst, the City of the Future. Say that Wilders would have been our first, our premier.
Yeah, and he would be sitting at that table with
He
you.
said, okay, I don't want all these 30,000 Asiated people from Asia here.
Yeah.
So, sorry for ASML, because this is the knowledge industry.
Yeah.
We cut that down. That could have been a possibility, and then certainly you don't need all these houses there in Vellenor. So this really has a direct impact on what can happen.
Yeah.
Changing policies. You don't have to look too far. If you look at what's happening in the United States at the moment, a sudden change of policy really shatters the whole world.
It brings me to a point where you said actually you should put everybody together at the table. But doesn't that require a very open attitude? Because everybody's going to stay behind their own cards. You won't get the real issue on the table, and then it won't work, will it?
You need the more visionary developers, which are there.
Yeah.
And the more visionary municipality people. There are a lot of people that see things like this, and maybe they could be the front warriors to get this done.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the universities should play a role here. It's their work.
Yeah, so they should be at the table as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you got any last thing that you would give the audience, and I'll give you all a turn. What would you like to give them, other than go and have a look at the exhibition?
Hear what they think about it.
Yeah, think very well about it. Yeah.
We have a question there.
Got a question? Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay.
I'm Lisanne, I'm an architect, and I'm actually still struggling with what kind of program I would like to use or can use.
Okay, but the question then is, what do you want the program to do for you?
Yeah, I actually would like to know what your recommendation would be for using AI for optimization of of apartment buildings or.
Is it more of the presentation, or is it more
so
like
it's not about the nice images, actually.
No?
There's like Midjourney, but other programs which you would recommend for optimization of structures of buildings. So you have input of a program, and you can get volumes out of it.
Okay. Is that an easy thing to answer?
I'm familiar with this because I've also used. Are you familiar with Grasshopper or Rhino?
Yeah, that's where I'm starting with at the moment.
Yeah,
So
I would say that
that's
is
direction.
the best platform there is to it. And using multi-objective optimization, Galapagos, or there's optimization, really easy and simple optimization ways you can do in Grasshopper. But after our talk is finished, I'm happy to explain also a bit more detail.
That's great, thanks.
So take the opportunity afterwards. Yes, another question.
I'm an architect as well, and I'm wondering if there's still some space left in deploying.
We don't need to, I think even for us we'll understand that, deploying. No? Oh goodness. To mess around. Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
There's actually the space to be creative and make mistakes and...
Trial and error.
Okay, trial and error
Yeah,
space.
definitely. Yeah, and I think AI is pretty good in that, actually, to mess around. Yeah, that's maybe because we're coming to an end, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
That's also a call to action, to just mess around with it and to see what the opportunities are and to play with it and see how it can inspire you to do better things. Hopefully.
Yeah, actually, by changing your prompt, your question, just slightly, and then seeing what it does, will give you a lot of, new ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's actually more playing with it as well, not only just using it in a straightforward sense, but also playing with it.
At a certain point, we're definitely going to use it to increase our speed and our to make better, smarter things.
Yeah.
We're just in the early phase, but it's getting it's going really fast. So I would say that's keep up with the speed. I would say because. Alexander Klupping, maybe you know him. He said also AI. It's going terribly fast. It's not about the amount of people that work on it. It's really about the adaptivity. So it's really about how fast you can keep up with the pace. So it's not for the big companies to do it. It's really about the people who are going to do it.
So that's where my fear was. Can I keep up? Actually, yes. Frans, have you got something you want to give the audience before we close the discussion?
Thank you for being here.
Very good. Anything more to add?
No, I think we should go there.
Yeah, I think, well, thank you very much. There is going to be a summary of this meeting. It will come on the website of Architectuurcentrum Eindhoven. It's also being filmed. If that has worked, we don't know yet, there'll be a link so that you can actually see it afterwards, and you can also send it through to other people as well. I'd like a great applause for our three speakers. And we want to thank you. We were really looking forward to having a discussion with the audience and to know what your fears, your doubts and your questions were. So thank you very much. And we hope to see you at a drink next to the exhibition. Okay, thank you.